Night beasts, night stalkers, night terrors, the people of the night. Putting one in the same room as anyone, even a possible super soldier, meant sentencing him or her to die. Those nocturnal hunters were the stuff of nightmares and horror vids. Purely carnivorous, they could eat plant matter like any normal race, but would become blind, start to wither away, and eventually die off without flesh to supplement it. They were small compared to most beings, but incredibly strong and moved faster than the eye could track. With a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, claws up to 8 centimeters long on their feet, and a kick powerful enough to take the head off a massive ice-walking Kent, they were near-perfect land predators. The night beasts hailed from Nyx, a high-gravity Class 11 death world far out on the northern galactic rim, and thankfully not anywhere else. Calling them sentient was a matter of debate. They had no technology to monitor. No one had dared step foot on their world long enough to study them peacefully, and those that were taken by force tended to be less than cooperative. Indeed, no less than 3 ships had had their crews slaughtered to a being after poaching a live night beast. In 2 of the cases where scans showed only the creature alive aboard, the ships were railgunned into oblivion just to be on the safe side. The insurance companies would have much rather written them off as a total loss than risked recovering them. The 3rd case had been different. The ship had been recovered in orbit around Nyx, with a single escape pod missing and nothing but dead bodies aboard. Logs indicated that the creature had gotten loose when the ship was some 20,000 light-years away, warping space at full speed for its home port. Curiously, in order to make the ship reverse course, the emergency lockdown had to have been somehow overridden and the ship's AI reprogrammed. That's not to say no study whatsoever had been done on the things. Solitary specimens had been killed, collected, and studied, but there was only so much a carcass could tell scientists. From the necropsies they said their brains seemed capable of intelligent thought, but theory and practice were often very different. There was no way of knowing for sure, but AIs tasked with decrypting their language from 1 or 2 illicit probes seemed to think they were capable. But the recordings of the escape incidents on all 3 of those vessels played back nothing more than inarticulate screams of rage, untranslatable gibberish, and demands for intercourse. Intercourse this, intercourse that, intercourse you, and so on, even as they tore throats out with bare hands and disemboweled stomachs with clawed bare feet. These were, of course, blatant mistranslations despite AI protestations to the contrary. Since the most recent incident years ago, Anticton hadn't heard of anyone else illegally visiting the planet, let alone claiming one of the beasts. Could have been that they were simply successful and no one heard about it, but he doubted it. Then, 2 standard weeks ago, he and his crew of mostly willing servants had been offered more credits than he had seen outside a lottery drawing for one of the monstrosities alive and in good condition. Having a veterinarian who couldn't refuse to work had been a gift from the 5 lords of heaven. He had agreed to procure a night beast for a very noble buyer, a member of the idle rich, interested in exotic animals for his menagerie. The pay would be enormous and included capture tools, medical equipment like tranquilizers and a translator for his vet to implant, and retrofitting his ship to hold the thing before the venture had even begun. The translator was almost funny, were the thing not so expensive and hazardous to implant. The buyer had insisted that if worst came to worst, they should try to reason with rather than kill it and lose what credits he had already invested. The easy part was acquiring it. It had been off on a solo night hunt somewhere on the plains of Nyx's broken surface when they found it. It only took 1 dart of the specially developed drug used to tranquilize, though it was so powerful that it could have killed off his entire crew and all his merchandise, were it divided up evenly between them. The being had only 4 appendages, smooth skin with soft lavender tone, and had covered itself in skins that weren't its own. A length of jet black fur swept back from where it attached to the top of its head and ran down to where its lower appendages met its torso. The 2 razor-sharp claws were present on its feet, each almost a decimeter long, with a third, tiny vestigial claw on the outsides. Its 3 fingers on each hand were as blunt as any sentience. It was a large specimen for its kind at 175 centimeters, and incredibly dense with heavy muscles. For men had to carry it onto a levitation pallet and then on into its hardened composite cage, which itself was inside a heavily reinforced cargo hold in the belly of his ship. So far, the creature had killed only 3 of his crewmen. As far as Captain Anticton was concerned, that was already an acceptable return on investment. Fewer people to share the prize, and he got to learn who among his men was dumb enough to approach the docile-looking creature during feedings despite being specifically told not to do so. He had hoped to limit the amount of flesh the thing consumed in order to keep it in a weakened state, but that wasn't going to happen now. It hadn't even finished with the first corpse before it killed the other 2 crewmen. They had tried to pull their already dead friend from its cage. Instead, they only ended up joining him inside. How a 1.5 meters wide, 2.5 meters tall Tauretan male could fit between the 10-centimeter wide gaps in the bars was one of the mysteries of nature. It went to show that, if one pulled hard enough, anything was possible. The captain wasn't worried. The night beast ate 3 meals per night cycle as best as he could tell. They would eventually recover the all-wayward crewman as it threw the finished bones from its cage. It had tried to kill a 4th and 5th time, but only managed to take a tentacle off one crewman and shatter another's upper hip. They hadn't gotten close to it, no. Vid footage proved that. The thing had thrown the thigh bones of the consumed crewmen at their compatriots, with deadly force and accuracy. He hadn't known it could do that. Quick-witted observers erected a force field between the cage and the entrance to the hold just in time to prevent lethal follow-up projectiles. Not once since it had been here had it done anything but roar and scream. He had tried to talk to it a few times but got nowhere. His conversations always ended the same way, with him having to blast it with cold water hard enough to kill a man just to shut it up. It rarely worked at first, but when he did it for long enough it usually just ended up accepting its fate, silently gasping for air, half drowned in the corner of its cell as the water pounded it. He didn't do that more than a few times. It's not that he felt sorry for it, or didn't feel like getting vengeance for his crew, although he could not care less. It was just that he had better things to do than torture a stupid beast. No, he would definitely not be putting this human anywhere within reach of this thing. The snuff vids of the dismemberment would be valuable, sure, but perhaps not as valuable as a slave from an uncharted world. Those like Steven were totally off-record, with no one to come looking for them, and nowhere to escape to. Some of the less reputable slave buyers would pay top credit for the likes of him. That, and he didn't feel inclined to give the night beast yet another week's worth of hearty meals.